My daughter-in-law laughed right in my face at the dinner table, and my son actually told me not to make a scene. I stayed quiet, not because I was weak, but because I was waiting for the perfect moment. When she brought up money, I said just one sentence, and suddenly the whole table went dead silent. The roast smelled amazing, filled with rosemary, just like every Sunday in my house in a quiet neighborhood outside Denver. My son Ryan sat to my right, and his wife Brooke right across from me. Brooke had recently decided my old oak hutch was depressing and that I should replace it with some cheap modern stuff. I just smiled. Renata, Brooke said, sipping the wine Ryan had bought with my money. "We've been thinking about your budget. This house is way too big, and well, you're not really using the space efficiently." She let out a sharp little laugh. "Maybe you could clear out the upstairs for my yoga classes. You just sit up there with your old photo albums anyway." Ryan stared at his plate. The two of them had moved in 6 months ago, just temporarily, they said, until their new build was done. Since then, I'd been covering the groceries, the electric bill, and the heating. Ryan chuckled along quietly. "Come on, Mom, she's got a point. You're kinda stuck in the past. Don't be so stubborn." I set my fork down. That's when the whole vibe shifted. "It's interesting you're suddenly so worried about how efficient my house is," I said calmly. Brooke rolled her eyes. "Oh God, not another lecture about organization. We're just trying to help you before you totally lose touch. A little structure would do you good instead of sitting around all day." She laughed again, and this time Ryan joined in louder. He even called me cute, like I was some kid who needed handling. I didn't feel angry, just a clear, cold clarity. They took my generosity for weakness. They figured if I didn't push back, I had no choice. "I get it," I said, pouring myself some water. "You're concerned about structure." Brooke shot Ryan a triumphant little grin. She thought she'd won. She had no idea I'd already decided right then and there to end the game. Brooke acted like the house was already hers, but she'd forgotten whose name was on the deed. The next morning, the kitchen looked like a battlefield. Brooke had eaten breakfast and left everything out. That was her new routine. I was the landlord. The cook and the maid all rolled into one. Ryan had already left for work, and Brooke was parked at the dining table with her laptop. "Renata, can you descale the coffee maker? It's taking forever," she called without looking up. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I grabbed my little notebook. Ever since they moved in, I'd been tracking every expense. Heating costs were up 40%, and the water bill had jumped too. I sat down across from her. "Brooke, we need to talk about the bills." She gave a short laugh. "Ryan said it's all handled internally. We're saving for the house build. Remember, every penny counts." She kept typing. "Besides, this is family helping family. That's how it works." I nodded slowly. Family help isn't a one-way street. I stood up and walked to the fuse box in the hallway. I knew exactly which switch controlled the dining room outlets. One flip and Brooke's laptop screen went black. Her battery had been shot for weeks, I knew that. "What the hell?" she yelled from the kitchen. I walked back in. "The wiring's old, Brooke. Like you said, I live in the past. The system can't handle all this modern load. If you want to work here, we'll need to upgrade the electrical. That costs money." She stared at me, stunned. "Then get it fixed. You've got plenty in the bank." I gave her my sweetest mom smile. "I've already budgeted my money for the month. But since you're both living here, I'm sure you can cover the electrician. I've got the quotes in an email." Brooke snorted. "Forget it. Ryan will handle it." She grabbed her phone to call him. I watched her furiously texting. She still didn't get it. Ryan wasn't in charge here. He was just a guest, same as her. The first crack in their confidence was there, but the real shock was coming that evening. When Ryan got home, the tension was thick. Brooke had already filled him in on the phone. He stormed into the living room where I was calmly reading a book. "Mom, what's with the power? Brooke couldn't work all day. You can't just flip the breaker like that." I looked at him over my glasses. I didn't flip anything, Ryan. I reduced the load so we wouldn't have a fire. The house is old. Remember, you two spent all last night explaining how inefficient everything is. Ryan rubbed his temple. Come on. We pay for the internet and the streaming services. That counts for something. I set the book down. The internet's on my account, Ryan. You just use the password. And you two are the ones using the streaming. I barely watch TV. I pulled out an envelope. Here's the breakdown of the extra costs over the last 6 months. Since you love structure so much, starting next month, I expect $650 a month to cover the increased water, electric, and groceries. Brooke, standing in the doorway, laughed hysterically. $650. That's almost a mortgage payment. This is extortion from your own family. I stayed calm. It's just covering the actual extra costs. If that's too much, you're welcome to move into your new house early or get your own apartment. Our house is still just a shell, you know that, Ryan snapped. I nodded. Then it's time to set some priorities. You can be guests who adjust or tenants who pay. But being guests who act like they own the place while paying nothing that ends today. Brooke glared at me. You're so petty, Renata. No wonder nobody comes to visit. That line was supposed to hurt. It didn't. It just confirmed I was doing the right thing. Brooke thought she could isolate me with words, but she forgot who controlled the pantry keys. The next week, I changed things up. I used to cook for everyone, shop for everyone, and keep the fridge stocked. Now I only bought what I needed for myself. I put a simple lock on the pantry door, not fancy, just a clear message. Community sharing stops here. Wednesday evening when I got home, Brooke was standing in front of the locked door. Where's the flour? And the wine? I wanted to have people over, she snapped. I only bought what I need for myself today. I answered calmly while hanging up my coat. You invited guests into my house, I asked after a pause. Brooke lifted her chin. We need to feel comfortable here too. It's our home for now. I smiled. Then I hope your guests bring their own food. I'm eating out tonight with an old friend. Ryan walked in and spotted the lock. Mom, this is ridiculous. A lock on the kitchen pantry? That's crazy. I looked him straight in the eye. What's crazy, Ryan, is a 35-year-old man expecting his mother to bankroll his wife's lifestyle while she mocks me at the dinner table. Ryan turned red. He started to say something, but Brooke cut him off. Just let her, Ryan. She's craving attention. We'll order pizza and have our friends over anyway. We don't need your old stuff, Renata. I nodded. Have fun. But remember, the living room is my private space after 8 p.m. You're welcome to party upstairs in your room on the second floor. Brooke stared like I'd just banned breathing. That's incredibly rude. No, I said gently. That's structure. You love structure, right? I headed upstairs to change. I could hear them downstairs hissing and arguing. For the first time in months, the house felt like mine again. The party happened, but it went nothing like Brooke had planned. Brooke and Ryan's guests showed up around 7 p.m. work colleagues of Brooke's who cared a lot about keeping up appearances. I stayed in my room until I heard them spreading out in the living room. I'd turned the heat down to about 62 degrees there, the energy upgrade I'd mentioned. I came downstairs dressed all in black, ready for my dinner out. When I stepped into the living room, 4 people were sitting on my couch in thick sweaters. Brooke looked nervous. Renata, we were just about to. Good evening, I said, pleasantly cutting her off. Nice to see all of you. Sorry about the chill, but Ryan and Brooke have been very clear that we need to live more efficiently and save money around here. I'm just following their advice. The guests glanced around, confused. Brooke tried to salvage it. Renata's joking a little with her humor. I gave a soft laugh. Oh no, Brooke. I take you both very seriously. Ryan, have you told your guests that starting next week you'll be paying rent for your rooms? I think it's great you're finally stepping up and taking responsibility. The silence in the room was so heavy, you could have cut it with a knife. One of the colleagues raised an eyebrow. Rent? I thought you were building a house and staying here. You know, as family support. Ryan mumbled something incoherent. Brooke turned beet red. Her whole image as the successful independent woman who had everything under control was crumbling right there. I've got to go, I said, grabbing my bag. Enjoy ordering in. Ryan, don't forget to take the trash out. It's Tuesday. I walked out without waiting for a reply. I knew the party would be over within an hour. When I got back late that night, the house was dark. There was a note from Ryan on the kitchen table. That was unnecessary. We need to talk. I tore it up and threw it away. We'd already talked. Now I was acting. Ryan tried to play peacemaker, but he didn't realize there was no middle ground left. The next day, Ryan was waiting for me in the kitchen. There was no coffee because I'd locked up the beans. Mom Brooke's been crying for hours. You humiliated her in front of her coworkers. Why are you doing this? He looked genuinely wrecked. I sat down across from him. Ryan, I'm not humiliating anyone. I'm just telling the truth. If the truth feels humiliating, maybe you should rethink your behavior. Not my words. Ryan shook his head. We're your family. You can't treat us like strangers. You're right, I said. Family supports each other. But family also respects each other. Since you moved in, Brooke has treated me like an old piece of furniture in the way. And you just watch and laugh at her jokes. I rested my hand on the table. I took care of you for 30 years. Now I'm taking care of myself. Ryan looked down. We'll be out soon. The house will be done in 3 months. I smiled faintly. I drove by the site yesterday, Ryan. It's still just the foundation. 3 months, more like a year. And I'm not playing housekeeper for you for another year. He looked shocked. You went to the construction site. Yes. I wanted to know how long this structure was really going to last. And now that I know it'll be a while, I've made a decision. I'm renting out the upstairs long-term to a college student. It'll bring in income and some nice company. What? Ryan blurted. Where are we supposed to go? We need that space. I didn't budge. You have the guest room. That's plenty for 2 people. Brooke's yoga stuff needs to go. I already posted the ad this morning. Just then, Brooke walked in. She'd heard everything. Her face was pure fury. You're not doing that. That's our space. I stood up. No, Brooke. This is my house. And starting today, my rules apply. If you don't like it, the notice period for guests without a lease in this house is exactly 24 hours. The threat hung in the air. Brooke knew they couldn't find anything this cheap anywhere else. 2 days later, Claire showed up at the door. She was a music student, polite, and desperately needed a room. I showed her the upstairs. Brooke stood in the hallway with her arms crossed, trying to intimidate Claire with dirty looks. It's a little old-fashioned in here, isn't it? Brooke said loudly as we walked past. Claire glanced at her, then smiled at me and said, I think it's beautiful. It has so much character. Way better than those sterile new builds. I liked her instantly. After Claire signed the papers, I handed her a key. You have full use of the kitchen and living room, I said loud enough for Brooke to hear. And don't worry about the other residents. They're only here temporarily and will be moving out soon. Brooke was fuming. That evening, she tried a new angle. She came into my room while I was watering my plants. Renata, let's drop the games. We'll pay the $650. But the student has to go. She's invading our privacy. I set the watering can down. I'll happily take the money as catch-up for the past months. But Claire stays. She pays too, and she's a lot more pleasant company than your coworkers. Brooke snorted. You're only doing this to spite me. I'm doing this to support my own life without depending on Ryan's moods, I corrected her. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm heading to the garden with Claire. She wants to play something for me on her flute. Brooke stared as I walked away. She'd lost control of the space, and now she was losing control of time, too. I wasn't spending my evenings anymore waiting for a kind word from Ryan. I had my own life back. Brooke got desperate enough to make a fatal mistake. She went after my savings. It happened on a Friday. I'd left my iPad in the kitchen. When I came back, I caught Brooke quickly switching screens. She knew I often left my online banking open. I said nothing, took the tablet, and went to my room. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with a notification of $5,000 transfer request to a construction company. My heart raced, not from fear, but from disappointment. They'd seen my login saved on the living room computer and tried to take themselves a loan. I canceled it immediately and changed every password. Then I called Ryan. "Come home right now. And bring Brooke." My tone left no room for argument. 10 minutes later, they were standing in front of me. "Didn't work out?" I asked bluntly. Brooke played innocent. "What do you mean?" I held up my phone. "The attempt to steal $5,000 from my account." "Ryan, did you know about this?" Ryan looked like he might faint. "Brooke, you said she promised it to us." Brooke turned on him screaming, "We need it for the windows." "Ryan, otherwise the build stops. She has so much it wouldn't even matter to her." I stood up slowly. I didn't raise my voice. I spoke quieter than ever. "It did matter. And that was the last line you crossed." I reached into my closet and pulled out 2 packed suitcases I'd prepared that morning, with their most important things. "You're leaving. Now." Ryan stammered, "Mom, it's raining outside. Where are we supposed to go?" "To your house," I said coldly. "Where the foundation is. You can camp there or get a hotel. But you're not spending another night under my roof. If you're not gone in 10 minutes, I won't call the police. I'll call the neighbors and tell them exactly why you're leaving." Brooke started to protest, but Ryan's shame finally outweighed his passivity. There were no dramatic tears or goodbyes. It was just frantic rushing. Ryan and Brooke hauled their stuff to the car. The rain pounded against the windows, just like Brooke had predicted. She muttered curses while tossing her expensive designer bags into the trunk. Ryan paused at the door one last time. He looked small. "I'm sorry, Mom. I should have spoken up sooner." I looked at him, my son, the one I'd loved so much I'd gone blind to his weakness. "Yes, Ryan, you should have. But you chose to laugh along." I handed him one last envelope. "What's this money?" he asked with a flicker of hope. I shook my head. "No. It's the bills for the electrician and cleaning the room. I'll pay them from what you still owe me. Consider the rest tuition." Brooke honked impatiently outside. She didn't even look back. To her, I'd just been a resource that finally ran dry. Ryan sighed, turned, and walked to the car. I closed the door and turned the lock. The silence that settled over the house afterward wasn't empty. It was peaceful. Claire came down the stairs with her flute. "Everything okay, Renata?" I heard some noise outside. I smiled at her. "Everything's fine, Claire. We just got rid of some old furniture that didn't fit anymore." I went to the kitchen and made myself some tea. For the first time in months, I didn't have to ask anyone if I could use the stove. The house was mine again. It breathed easier, and so did I. But one thing was still missing: the final proof of my independence. A month later, my house was bright and clean again. Claire and I had replanted the garden. One afternoon, my phone rang. It was Ryan. He sounded exhausted. "Mom, we're in a small rental apartment now. Brooks, she's gone a lot. The house build is on hold." I listened, but I didn't feel any urge to rescue him. That's life, Ryan. Sometimes things don't go according to plan. You need good structure, just like you two always said. There was a long pause on the other end. Can we come over for dinner Sunday?" he asked quietly. I glanced at my calendar. "Not this Sunday, Ryan. I'm driving with Claire to a concert in the mountains. Maybe in a few months once you've learned how to behave like guests. I hung up. It wasn't cruel, it was a boundary. I'd learned you don't help people by letting them walk all over you. I walked into the living room and looked at my old oak hutch. It looked beautiful in the afternoon sunlight. Brooke had said my things, and my life had no value. But while she sat in an unfinished shell, I sat in a house full of music and respect. I hadn't fought with lawyers, I'd used facts. I hadn't yelled, I'd acted. I picked up my tablet and checked my account. The numbers were steady. My life was steady. I was Renata, 68 years old, and I was in charge of my own destiny. Anyone who mocked me lost their seat at my table. It was that simple. And that satisfying. Some things don't need an audience to be real. They just need to be built stone by stone, boundary by boundary. Sometimes silence isn't giving in, it's the decision to wait for the right moment and end things clearly once and for all.